What's up, everyone? How's everybody tonight? I got Mr. Man Parrish on,
Where is
and
he?
welcome to the History of Health show.
Oh,
So,
this guy.
just
Oh,
first,
yeah.
thank
All
you
right.
for
That's me. Yeah, what we used to say in school. That's my name. Don't wear it out. That's old school. That's old school.
well, I see. Well, it's good to see you, Manny, as you said. I can call you, so I don't want
You can
anybody to
call me.
think I'm being
Anybody can call
disrespectful.
me Manny.
Okay. Well, it's good to have you on the show, sir. You know, I've been a fan of your music since 1984 when I was a young b-boy breakdancer. And you know, your music has stood the test of time. We've rocked all your music here in Chicago. Your music was rocked, of course, all over the world, but here in Chicago, we really love your music. You know, I told you it's an open debate if your song is hip hop bebop is actually house music because it fits our little genre when we're playing it, or if it's actually hip hop. So we try to claim it here in Chicago. I don't think the New York people like that.
You guys call it house. Kids in England call it electro. You know, New York calls it rap. Miami calls it freestyle. I don't care as long as they listen to it, right? That's all that counts, right?
As long as they listen to it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that points out that your music really crossed a lot of lines ethnically, genre-wise. I mean, you know, and it was foundational in all the styles of music that we're talking about. I mean, the freestyle people say you're foundational. All the electronic music people, be it house or Detroit techno
The
or
electro kids in
electro,
England.
you know, we say it's your foundational.
And it's funny when I do
Exactly.
interviews, it depends on,
You know, so
when I do interviews, it depends on who's talking, right? And like sometimes they'll ask me like New York street questions, or sometimes they'll ask me synthesizer questions. It depends if somebody's like house or rap or hip hop, you know, whatever, or electro. I get like each interview is different depending on like what the person's background is and how they see where my music came from. So that's kind of cool, right? I mean, I guess, you know, I don't know. Yeah.
but you know, you have a lot of people that you influence, and like I said, it goes across the board, man. I mean, obviously, you know, like I said, we here, you know, we were breakdancers for a while before house came and swept us here in Chicago. So, you know, we were really into the b-boy music as well. So basically, I mean, man, you're just a legend in electronic music,
Oh, now
you
you're gonna
know.
make me
So
blush.
I'm gonna ask you a favor.
Sure.
Since my little video that I made for you came up is about a minute, can I run it real quick?
Go right ahead. I'll go.
Okay, people,
Floss.
we're
I'll
gonna.
go floss my ass while you're doing that.
Here's how this was supposed to start. Now I feel good.
You did that yourself? You did that?
Yes, I did.
Yourself? Hey, I even got my own font. I like that. Yeah, it's looking smooth. Yeah, all right. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. All right.
Okay. Well, first, man, let me just
I want
ask
to
you a question.
apologize to everybody because I'm sitting here holding the phone by my hand. So I'm just letting everybody know it's going to be a little shaky. So if you get nauseous, you know, forgive me.
Well, they'll be all right. They'll be all right. So let me ask you a couple questions, man. Number one, question everybody is probably going to, most questions that people have asked me to ask you is number one,
How many inches?
how, well, we're assuming 12 since we're, you know, it's always 12 inches.
12 black inches and a hole, baby. 12 black inches and a hole. We actually, you know, I want to say something about that because when we did a couple of records, we used to go to the mastering process and they would scratch like a serial number between the label and
Oh
the
yeah.
last groove. And we used to ask them to put messages in there, and we put 12 black inches in a hole, or, word to your mother, or whatever stupid thing we could think of, like in 2 seconds. And a lot of those vinyl records have little messages right in there. So there you go. That's a DJ thing too. So there you go.
Oh,
DJs,
now
get
we
out
know.
your records and see if the bootlegs wouldn't have it, and a lot of the licenses wouldn't have it, but the original records probably did.
Now, like hip hop bebop, what was the original label? Was that that wasn't it wasn't Sugar Scoop, right?
No, it was Import 12. So Import 12 came out of um, a company called Disconnect. Disconnect used to do DJ mixes. They were the first DJ subscription service in America, I think anywhere in the world, actually. And they would get, there were no 12-inch records back then when Disconnect first started. They kind of made them. So whatever record was out, they would ask the record label for, like a reel-to-reel copy of it. They would make multiple copies, and then they would just go in and edit and loop stuff and make a 4-minute song into like a 10-minute song, so you could play it in the clubs. And DJs, I don't know what they spent back in those days, but they spent relatively a lot to subscribe to the service. And every month you got a package in the mail, or every 2 weeks you got a package in the mail with two, or I think it was two vinyl records. Right. And that would have mixes of whatever was hot on the radio. But you were the only person that had a 12-inch mix of these songs when labels weren't doing that. They didn't think it was that important, So,
So that's how like the record pools and stuff that they used to do back in the day.
yeah. So they used to give it to the record. A lot of they didn't give them to record pools. They gave them to subscribers. So
Okay.
you'd have to pay to get it shipped to you. You didn't get it as part of a record pool. And a lot of people don't know what record pools are. Just really, really quick. If you were promoting your record, you'd press an extra 1,000 copies, and all across America were what they call record pools. And you would know more than I was, because I wasn't a DJ, but I don't know whether you subscribed to a record pool or you just joined it and they gave you records. But people would fight to get the hottest record in their pool so they can get it out to the DJs. And for record companies and people making records, it was a great way to get your stuff across America and in the clubs for next to nothing. And radio stations were part of record pools too, not just DJs, because they wanted the latest stuff. And there were some very influential record pools, in some of the major cities. If you didn't service the pool, they could sink your record. Tell all the DJs not to touch it. Give us the record or we'll destroy you. Trust me.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow. So what made you? I guess what made you get into making the phenomenal music you made? Because obviously,
well, I wasn't into drugs. See, if I smoked weed, I got paranoid. If I did coke, I got paranoid. If I drank, I fell asleep. But I when I was back very young, 15, 14, 15, 16, I did smoke weed. And what stopped me is one day somebody came to the house and said, "Oh, I got this new weed. It's treated. It's called angel dust. You'll love it." And I almost literally walked out of a window on the 4th floor because I thought the 4th floor was the 1st floor. That's how high I got. But I used to like to smoke weed, and I built a synthesizer from Radio Shack. We were talking once before, and I heard Autobahn in a taxi cab going home one day, and me and the taxi cab driver just sat in front of my house with the meter off and listened to a long version of the whole version of Autobahn. And back in those days, it was rock and roll or jazz or classical, and like, what the fuck is this? It was like electronic music. And once I heard that, I always wanted to do music, but I'm not a musician. And to this day, I have 120 records out, and I can score for orchestra and choir. I can't write music. You tell me something, can you make that in D, the key of E flat? I mean, I don't know. But I was suddenly able, because they were doing music that involved drums and keyboards. I knew I could fake the keyboards, but how was I ever going to get a drum happening? And I was too embarrassed of my musical knowledge to work with anybody in a group. But the 808 drum machine came out in Kraftwerk, and now I can suddenly be a band. So I didn't have the drum at first. I had a 2-track reel-to-reel tape recorder with sound on sound. And what that means is you record on track 1, and then you record some new information, and it puts it onto track 2. And then you take that track 2 information, and you record it with new information, and bounces back over to track 1. You have 3 layers, back and forth until you build up layers. The quality goes down and gets worse as you go generations because it's analog. But I would do these things called soundscapes, and I'd sit there and smoke, and I'd put on my black light, and under my Jimi Hendrix poster, and smoke weed and make kind of sounds because there weren't any ambient or synthesizer records out, and I didn't know where to buy a Kraftwerk record, so that's kind of how I started, right? And then I became that weird dude in town that has synthesizers that can make sounds. So can I pay you $20 to come play, make some weird sounds on my record or something like that? So that led into, my friend was working for like a real sleazy, like, it's the equivalent of a bad titty magazine in the gay world. It was like, it wasn't Inches, but it was something like, like Hung magazine or something like really like, not that I ever looked at that magazine, right? but my friend was like the assistant editor, and they were viewing some porn, and he said, I told the director of this film that you make music, and he was trying to find somebody to do a soundtrack for his porn movie that has synthesizers that like.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
No. That's okay. So I said, well, I'm sure, get him in contact with me. And he said, I'll pay you a whole $1,000 for a film score. I mean,
oh, wow.
And back then it was like $20,000, $30,000, $50,000. I'll pay you and I thought $1,000. Oh my God, I'm going to be rich. When do I get to see the movie and work on it at the same time? He said, no. He said, I need a 10-minute piece of music, a 4-minute piece of music, 2 8-minute pieces of music. Give me a 3-minute piece of music that I could loop and extend. And I need 6 or 7 pieces of music. And I need a song for the title. It's called Heat Stroke. So that wound up on my first album because the fucking perverted DJ at a place called The Anvil in New York, where they have fire-breathing drag queens and butt dildo shows, I have a really good beginning, by the way. Real class act. So in those days, you used to make acetates, and you could take a tape and bring it up to, I think it was called Sunshine Music on Broadway, and you'd stand there. They'd have a counter, and behind the counter they had this machine. They put a piece of acetate on it and put a needle down and play your tape from a cassette or whatever you have onto this record. Oh, wow. and you'd have a temporary record. They were meant as test pressings to take home and play once or twice, but you'd have they would wear down really fast because they weren't plastic, they were vinyl. Acetate. So he took the soundtrack to the porn movie that I did, put it on a cassette tape, brought it up there, made a song, and he would play it in the club with all the on top of the music, and then someone said, they're playing your music at the Anvil Club in New York. And I'm like, what? Oh, you got to go down there. And I went down there, and I'm standing around, and I get my back against the wall. Not that I'm a prude, but I've been there, done that. And at that time, at I was 20 years old. I was like, yeah, this place is really fucked up. I love it. It's my kind of place. Trannies, freaks, drag queens, drug addicts, the mentally insane, you know what I mean? It's like, my clubhouse, I'm home. And all of a sudden my song comes up, and I walked up on the DJ booth, and I looked over, and he said, no requests. I said, no, wait a minute. That's my record. He goes, what do you mean that's your record? I said, I did the music for that. It's from the movie Heat Stroke. He goes, oh my God, the guy from this Import 12 Disconet is looking to find out who did this because they want to release it on Disconet because it's really hot. Give me a number and I'll take you up tomorrow. And like in one day, I signed a 1-page record deal, which of course gave away everything, my grandmother's furniture, my firstborn. I get nothing back in return, no advance, no nothing, you know what I mean? But we put out Heat Stroke, it did good. And Raul Rodriguez was working at that office. He was a DJ. And the owner said, go over to Manny's house and listen to whatever else he has. We got to make an album. And Hip Hop Bebop was an 8-track. And when I say 8-track, it's not like the cassette 8-tracks in a car. It's a tape recorder. Instead of having two stereo, it was stereo times 4. So it was 8 separate tracks. And that's how most of that first album was done at home in my parents', in the bedroom of my parents' house, laid down on a tape machine like that. We brought it into a bigger studio to mix it. We bounced it to 24-track and added a couple extra parts, but most of that is from there, and that's why it sounds so good, because it's it was like old school technology.
Wow. So yeah, everybody listening, a lot of us produce music and compose. Now we have Pro Tools and
I use,
Ableton Live.
I think my screen's locked out here, but I use Logic. Let me see if I can get this to turn on. I'm a Logic person. You can probably see it back there.
Wow.
I use Logic and a lot of plugins for mixing and stuff. That's my jam.
We got it real easy compared to what you guys had.
Well, we did music before. I mean, these are 3 64-inch monitors, all right? I mean, like 3 TVs in your living room. But back when we did Hip Hop Bebop and that whole album and all that stuff, there were no computers. I didn't have a sequencer until 2 or 3 years after Hip Hop Bebop, because they didn't happen. I had a Mac Plus with opcode sequencer, and it would jump and spurt, and it would just slow down in the middle of a song. It was insane. So when we did Hip Hop Bebop and 6 Simple Synthesizers and techno tracks and 2 Sisters High Noon and all that, there was no way to synchronize that stuff. But I have it here. There's an 808 drum machine. It would put little pulses out in the back. And that pulse used to drive a step sequencer in my Pro 1. And I could do ba da da ba 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 ba. And when you played the drum pattern, it would go da 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 da. So that's how we built sequences. You got to imagine 2 lights that are flashing together. Eventually, they're going to go out of sync. So I would record the first 30 seconds or minute, and then it would start losing sync with what's on the track. We'd have to rewind the tape and then go like a half a minute back and 2, 3, 4 and hit it on the downbeat. And I'd hit the drum machine to trigger the sequencer and go another 5 or 6 or 8 bars. And that just happened for like an hour just to get one track down because you messed it up. Yeah. I mean, and that's how we built 24 tracks of stuff at times. There was no other way to do it. Well, there was another way to do it. There was a digital synthesizer called the Roland MC8 Micro Composer, which I actually have. It was Giorgio Moroder's, and he used it on Donna Summer's I Feel Love, and I managed to get that. My vocoder actually was from Electric Light Orchestra, Mr. Blue Sky. I got theirs too. But and my one of the synthesizers was Patrick Calley's for Do You Want to Funk. So they're in my storage in my storage space. But everything was done by hand. There were no sequencers. There's none of this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This
no
makes it
MIDI.
easy. And I don't even use. I mean, I have some keyboards around here and stuff. You know what I mean? But I don't even use them. Everything is all virtual plugins. I mean, this looks great, but I haven't turned it on in years. I went and I bought this. This is more to impress your friends when you walk in the door than I actually use at this point. And I gotta sell it because everything is a plugin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it is much simpler. It is much simpler. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. All the things. So
I can show you
MIDI.
I'm going to show you a plugin. Let me see. How do I don't know if I could flip this screen around. Let me load a plugin here on Logic. Give me 1 second. Let me pull something up and I'll show you what a plugin looks like. I can actually have vintage synthesizers. I just got to find one.
Like the Mini Moog and all that stuff.
Mini Moog, the $10,000 Fairlight. All right, here's a DX7, which is a kind of a famous.
I remember that one.
Yeah, but here it is virtually, right?
Wow. Uh-huh.
Right there, and it's a machine. It's computer modeled to be exactly like the hardware. So I don't need synthesizers anymore. I have probably 400 or 500 plugins that serve different purposes. Mini Moogs. Moog modulars where they have those giant racks that are like a wall of synthesizer. I have ARC 2600, 2500, Oberheim's Juno 1s, which were used in house music. I mean, Juno 106 and all that kind of stuff. That's all. I have virtual 808 machines, and they're modeled by machine learning to be. I mean, if you put an oscilloscope, they're identically the same. So you don't need hardware anymore. It just makes it easier because it's all in one box, like over there, you know.
Yeah. You know,
And
wow.
I think the limit on this now is like 1,024 tracks. You know, on my old machine it was 8 tracks or 9 tracks, and it would start spitting out. You know.
The first stuff that we were doing, we were using a little Tascam 8-track.
Yeah.
You know, we thought we were cool.
Porta
you know.
Studio, right? The cassette recorded on cassette with Dolby noise reduction. Yeah. People were doing records off of cassette, a multi-track cassette, a standard cassette. You'd buy a standard, the highest quality Maxell or whatever cassette, and then use noise reduction. Yeah, I remember. Porta Studios.
So you did hip hop bebop. Now, all of us here will assume that you were super, super, super famous because we all knew your name, and you know we were looking at this record and listening to it and listening to how fat the sound was and.
Well, fame and fortune are 2 different things.
How it made us feel, and and how it made the crowd move. So, what was happening to you in real life?
Mm-hmm. Well, after
what was happening to you in real life
when
as far as when this was up?
Yeah, when Hip Hop Bebop came out, I thought, this is cool. I got a record out. It's on the radio. I'm doing shows here and there. Things are going to be good. I'm starting my journey into being something in music. And then a couple of months later, I was doing shows. We got $1,000 for show, but I probably spent about $800 or $900 for the show, between the van, the dry ice, paying, the dancers and somebody to help us out and somebody to drive us. By the time we were finished, I probably had $100, and the money's going down and down. I didn't have a bank account. I never worked. So I went up to the record label and I said, I need money. And they were like, don't you, you're just going to have to wait. It takes us 6 months to a year to collect money. I didn't know they were getting paid every 60 days or 90 days. And, I literally remember crying one day. I said, I'm going to literally be evicted. I don't know what to do. And he wrote a check for $500. I had sold a million and a half records at $12 a record. That's $12 million.
Yeah, because those 12 inches were high. And
what's that?
Yeah, those albums were a little costly back in the day.
Yeah. If it was $10 a record and I sold 1 million records, that's $10 million for it in, right? So,
right.
I was doing all these other records because he wasn't paying me on Hip Hop Bebop. I didn't know. I was 22 years old, and I didn't know. And I'd signed a piece of paper that said basically, fuck you. One of those typical stories. So I was doing records like High Noon and, COD in the Bottle, B-Boys Beware. I mean, I can go down a whole laundry list, even working on Alicia Records. And somebody just showed me the other day, I did the incidental music for the play The Ritz on Broadway in the 1983 revival. And I didn't remember until they showed me the poster. I was doing anything and everything. Porn movie soundtracks. I played on Gloria Gaynor's I Am What I Am in the studio for, I had a synthesizer, Klaus Nomi records. I mean, just so much shit I worked on, ridiculous. And that's how I made money and survived, because my record wasn't, paying me anything. And then I realized about 9 months later, something's wrong, because he told me, he said, well, Manny, they're bootlegging your records, and they had to have the FBI and the RIAA, Recording Industry Association of America, come in and go after these guys that are bootlegging your stuff in downtown Brooklyn, like in the back of a record shop. And I thought, if the FBI, and they're not selling 20 records or 100 records, they're moving some product here. And at that time, it was 2 million records. I had that, without the bootlegs, right? The guy was smart around the record label. He stopped the single and forced people to buy Hip Hop Bebop on an album. If you have a single or even a 7-inch, it's worth, $500, $600, $700. There weren't many copies of that, but he was smart because he went to like Harvard Business School, and he made people buy an album when all they wanted was a single. So in that way, he was like a business genius. But I remember sitting in my house in Brooklyn. I'd given up music because I wasn't getting paid. I thought, well, what the fuck am I doing? I wound up moving back to Brooklyn, which is a whole story in itself, because I played Studio 54. Madonna was my opening act. That's a whole other story. But I remember sitting at my house in Brooklyn, depressed, burnt out from doing music, on welfare and food stamps when you used to have those little pages you pull out, you know what I mean, when you got the book.
Yeah, I'm very familiar.
Yeah, and I'm sitting trying to sell food stamps for cigarette money, you know, the whole thing, you know what I mean? I didn't grow up in the hood, but I lived it, you know, I was homeless and all that. So that's in the old days when you had, we used to call them Dadillacs, because you had your daddy's caddy, but you put a sound system in there, or your father gave you a car because you couldn't afford one. And they had a big boom box in the back, and boom, boom, coming down the street with my windows open, I'd hear hip hop, bebop, boogie down Bronx, all that stuff playing, and I didn't get a penny, and I was cut off from the record label. So that's what happened. I wound up on Elektra Records. David Bowie's manager managed me. That's a whole story in itself. And I got $125,000 singles deal, which was unheard of. That would have made it $1 million advance for an album, which is completely unheard of. But they wanted me, Bowie's manager wanted me to do rock and roll and never do this electronic music again, because it's just time. It's not going to go anywhere. And I delivered like one of those maniac, one of those kind of songs that like, what the hell is this? Get out of here. So I lost my manager, my record label, my mom died. I lost my loft because I couldn't pay the rent. And the rent wasn't much. It was $600 a month, but I didn't have any money. So I wound up in Brooklyn, broke, depressed. And it took me years to recover from it.
Wow.
But I was still doing records here and there. People would call me up. Can I come to your studio for $50? I only have $50. I did that Man-to-Man male stripper, #1 all around the world. That was a fucking friend from New York, never paid me on it, but put my name on the cover. And then when I confronted him, he took my name off the cover. So not only did I not get paid, but he fucking stabbed me in the back by trying to erase my name off of it, right? Fucked up stuff. But Klaus know me. I worked with the Village People for 6 years. They came to the house. Boy George sat on my bed, you know what I mean? Practically, and sang. So I had this little famous house in Brooklyn where all these people would come, and the neighbors would say, who's coming this week? You know what I mean? So I didn't get paid cash, but I got paid in life experience, because I got to not everybody, a lot of people knew my name, but I got paid in that sense. So, you having me on the show, listening to my music in a way is like me still getting paid. It's not money. I feel good that somebody's listening to my music and cares enough to talk to me about it. So it's another form of payment.
Well, like I said, people still play your stuff. I still play your stuff.
People say you're a legend. You know what that means. You're just an old fart and you managed to make it to hear.
I know. I think you got legend status right after, I would say, after Boogie Down Bronx came out. Because you were already, everybody was like, who is this guy, when you had made Hip Hop Bebop. And then I remember hearing High Noon and Two Sisters, B-Boy Beware. We didn't even know that you did Watch the Closing Doors or the COD in the Bottle. We didn't know that.
Yeah. And when Alicia Baby Talk I worked on and Two Turned On with the Fairlight synthesizer. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I forget half of it, until somebody pulls it up or plays something to me. Mark Berry, who was the engineer, called me a few hours ago and he said, do you remember this record? And he playing to me on the phone. I could barely hear it. I go, sounds familiar. He goes, you did that. I'm like, what? You worked on it. And look at the credits. It says Man Parrish, and Roller Jenkins. I'm like, what? And I've got this great guy, Josh Sheo, and he's got a label called Dark Entries. And he's always pulling this obscure shit off the internet. Look, this sounds like your music. Is this your music? And I'm like, oh my God, yes. So there's like hundreds of things out there under all kinds of names. I told you the story of Two Sisters. I'll tell it again. Me and Raul Rodriguez hung around so much we walked in the office one day, and that fucking queen that was working there, and I'm a queen, so I can say it. That's my N word. I could use it.
Yeah, yeah.
So he turned around and he said, "Oh, it's Manny and Raul. You guys hang around with each other so much. You're like two sisters." And I went, oh, "Great name. You know that girl you're fucking? Let's get her, and let's get that other girl you want to fuck. They'll be the two sisters. Let's put them on the record and put them on the cover. We got a group." And a lot of those records were done. We would get to the studio. It's true. It's all true. We were so poor. We used to use Vanguard Studios, which, if you don't know music history, there was a studio called Muscle Shoals in the South that did all the Aretha Franklin and all the really early soul stuff. Well, Vanguard Studios is part of Vanguard Records. It was a jazz label, but they weren't using the studio for recording. We used to get in there. It's now the Gotham Comedy Club in New York. We used to, I mean, Freeze, IOU, me, Planet Rock, and all the Arthur Baker stuff. Alicia, Shannon, everybody was in that studio at one point or another. Because for $50, you can get it at 8 o'clock at night and get it till 8 o'clock in the morning. Otherwise, the lights were off and they weren't making money. So we would go in there with like two sisters, you know what I mean? Rolls in the corner, trying to figure out some lyrics and melody. And he's like, "What do you think of this about?" No, change it. And I'm there just rolling tape and coming up with stuff out of the clear blue, out of nowhere. And by midnight, they put vocals on till 2 o'clock in the morning. And from 2 to 5, we would mix it. And from 5 to 7:30, pushing it to barely 8 o'clock, we'd edit it with razor blades and it would be done. And we'd take it up to record label and make $300 or $100 or $500. If we made 1,000, we were rich, and we split it. So if I made $300, we got $150 for that, and they just claimed it as theirs.
Well, I hope the Chicago guys have been, always complaining about, and not that they're not supposed to complain, but the Chicago guys who got in some bad record deals with some of the labels here in Chicago.
I think you should complain. I think you should complain, because that's the only way other people are ever going to know about it. It's not cool to keep your mouth shut on that if somebody fucks you up. Because you don't want other people to suffer like I did and other people did.
Real quick,
I tell this to people. You ever wonder what happened to, like, oh, right, I remember what happened to them. Chances are they got ripped off and they put their tail between their legs, their head down, and they sat home, and it messed with their brain. Messed with mine. I mean, look what a perfect specimen I am.
Well, speaking of which, you were telling me about the guy who did the lyrics for Boogie Down Bronx, John Carter.
Yeah. So
how'd you meet him and what happened with him?
Yeah. So we were doing this track in my house, but since I had this little famous house, John Carter lived around the corner. His dad was working in the building. I was in a white Italian Jewish neighborhood. He was only the only black kid around for miles, and everybody was cool with him. And his dad was like super of the building or something like that. But this kid would rhyme, and I'd come home, or I'd be there with Raul, and sitting on the steps I had a little 2-family house. Sitting on the steps would be John Carter, and there's that kid again. And we'd walk with cool, my man Parrish and cool Raul, and we'd walk in the house, and the sound would fade away. And one day he was sitting out there, and I was upstairs writing music, writing Boogie Down Bronx as an instrumental. It's everything starts as an instrumental. And Raul said, "We should get that kid downstairs to rhyme on this record." I said, "Okay, bring him up." And I said, John Carter, I said, "It's Johnsky." I said, "John, I got to tell you, I haven't gotten paid on anything. If you want to rhyme on this record, we'd love you, and you'll be on a record. But I'm letting you know right now, I never got paid on this. I can't guarantee that you are. So you got to make a decision. If you do it, you may not get paid, because I probably won't either, but I'm just enjoying what I'm doing." He said, "No problem." We set up the mic, and I think we got it in one take, maybe 2. And then I went back and I tracked his voice with my vocoder. I took channel, probably the vocals were on channel 7, and I fed that into my vocoder, played it on the keyboard, and fed the vocoder out to track 8. So that's why there's a
That's
vocoder.
how we get that. Yeah, that.
And no one had done
Yeah,
that before. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So there's another thing with vocoders that I'll mention real quick is a lot of these radio stations have their station IDs. Kiss FM with vocoders. Back in New York, there was a radio station, and if you're listening or a DJ from New York, and you're as old as water like I am, you remember there was a radio station called KTU, and they always had this vocoder voice, 92 KTU or Dance Classics or DJ Mix or whatever we did on the vocoder. I was the first person anywhere to do that. And then shortly after, years later, radio stations followed, and now it's pretty common to have vocoder, you know, call letters and stuff like that. But they would take any record that I made, as long as it didn't have, it was payola, as long as it didn't have dirty words on it, they would put it on the air into heavy rotation as their form of paying me. So
Wow.
when you hear, next time you hear a station ID that has a synthesized voice, give me my dollar.
Start that
I
up.
want my money. I want my money.
Man, that is amazing. So now
I
after
was
you got,
very, very lucky. You know, there's so many talented people in this business that can't get arrested. And part of it is who you know. And I swear, and people don't want to hear this, but part of it was really luck. You know, I happened to hang out in New York City, which had a lot of musicians and a lot of freaks and a lot of celebrities, but they weren't really the ones that got me through music. I guess I was lucky, and I bought some equipment, and nobody else had synthesizers back then, and they wanted that sound on their record. And hey, call that dude Manny. He lives in a loft, and you know, give him a few bucks, and he'll play on your record. So that's kind of how I made it. But that, I think, was luck. You know.
I see, man. Well, I mean, you mentioned Kraftwerk, you mentioned Georgia Moroder. You know, were these people inspirational when you doing music?
Oh my God, you
like
got to
that?
realize, like I said, back in those days, it was either rock and roll or jazz. There wasn't, or maybe funk, but white radio stations didn't play funk. You know, I remember my friends were listening to Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. I was a Bowie fan only because of the makeup and the outfits. You know, I liked some of the early music. I hated the stuff later, but I was listening to Parliament. I would go out, and when I finally figured out there's a record store, I'd go to Corvette's, which is a chain store here on the East Coast, and they had a record department, and I would buy Parliament, you know, or Daz Band or funky stuff, and I'm cutting up beats, and not cutting up beats, but I'm, you know, getting down to stuff, and my friend's like, "Why are you listening to that black music?" I said, "Because I'm not into the white music," you know. So it wasn't funky enough. It didn't have a beat. It didn't move me. So that's kind of like my roots, I guess. You know, I build from the rhythm up. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I got a fat ass, and it's got to move it. If it doesn't move my ass, then, you know.
Why do it?
Well, I do a lot of ambient and classical music now too, for different reasons.
Yeah. But
You know,
that's,
stuff
I mean,
all groove,
you know,
man.
we all listen to different genres, even classical, jazz, and stuff, because you find out you learn a lot about music. Listening, like, you know, I learned a lot listening to Richard Wagner and Mozart, you know, about
Yeah, I don't give
composition
a
and
fuck
stuff.
what it is as long as it's good. I mean, there's Bach that just drives me crazy. I won't even listen to shit. It's sort of like, oh, what's that? Oh, that's really cool. Oh, that's classical. All right, who did that? And then I'll listen to some of the other stuff and go, that's all shit except for this one piece. So, you know what I mean? I just like music. If it's good, I'm not a snob. I'll listen to anything. But if I listen to it more than once, it's usually because, and you know, what's good? You know, you're a DJ, you got DJs out there, you play stuff, oh man, I can't wait to play this tonight. You play it, and cricket on the dance floor. You know what I
Been
mean?
there before.
So good is relative, right? It's definitely relative, you know. So yeah.
So I was going to ask you, so, you know, of course, when we heard Boogie Down Bronson, we were rocking it and breakdancing to it. We were waiting for the follow-up. That never happened. We never heard
Because
from
I
you.
never got paid, and,
Wow.
I was broken. My stuff, Boogie Down Bronx, Hip Hop Bebop, Tuesdays I Knew, blah 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 blah, all on the radio. KTU would play it like crazy. Then BLS and PLJ, and they'd go up and down the coast and play it. And I told the story that the guy from the record company would put little bags of Coke and MMDA in the records and send them out to DJs and to radio stations as a form of payola. You'd
That's
open up the
one way.
record, and out would fall a pack of Coke and a little note, please play this record. You know, sure they did. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, you just got paid. Play the record. You know, but I didn't get paid. The owner, when I walked away, the owner of the record label said, "I'd really like to talk to you and straighten things out." And I didn't know how well he did. Right? I knew it was off. He comes and he picks me up. He picked up Raul. He comes and he picks me up. He had a Porsche with a hand-carved dashboard, and he said, "Get in." And I was like, "Damn, this is nice." He goes, "Yeah, it's a hand-carved custom dashboard, and it's, you know, it's a special edition." And I thought, "Oh, damn, motherfucker, you're doing good," or whatever. Didn't put it together that I'm doing good. That's why you're doing good. It's a small record label. There was nothing there. We drove out to Teaneck, New Jersey. Everybody called him Captain Mike. We got on a private plane, and which he captained, and we're up in the air, and I'm looking out, and I said, "Damn, this is nice." He goes, "Yeah, it's my plane." And I said, "Wow." And he said, "Well, keep doing some more hit records for me, and I could buy another one." And I went, "Holy shit. Wow, this is way off of what I thought." And I remember looking out the window the whole time, and he goes, "Come on, man." He wants, "It was a joke. It was a joke." And I stayed silent, looking out the window, going, "I can't believe I got fucked this bad." I remember it clearly. Look, sitting in the co-pilot seat of a private plane, you know, 10,000 feet up in the air, going, "This is my plane, but it's not my plane." You know, I thought, "Oh my God," and that I couldn't emotionally take it anymore. It fucks your head up in a way that you don't know. When you do music, just like when you DJ or guys out there that put together set lists or sets, it's something that comes from your heart. And when you put something out there that comes from your heart and somebody is blatantly fucking you over and knows that you don't have $10,000 to go to a lawyer, because people say, "Well, why didn't you go to a lawyer?" I'm like, a lawyer wants a $5,000 deposit. I was a 23-year-old homeless kid, you know, barely able to feed myself on welfare and food stamps. How am I going to get a lawyer? I didn't know there was legal aid and all kinds of things. So there were no follow-ups to those records because I never got paid, and I couldn't take the pain of making somebody else money. You know what I mean? And then sitting back and hearing it on the radio. So I basically shut down a lot of that stuff. And discovered porn on the internet. No.
So
no, I mean, that's what happened.
So all those hit records, all those copies you guys sold, you guys get anything from that? It's horrible.
I didn't sell them; they sold them. You know, I didn't get anything off of that. I could probably say I got a check for $500 and a check for $300 to shut up and go away, pay your rent, and leave me alone, and don't come back and ask for any more. That's about what I made off of all that. Now, I got to work with a lot of famous people: Boy George, Michael Jackson, Gloria Gaynor, Village People, Roberta Flack. I did a remix on a soundtrack. In Europe, I worked with Steve Strange from Visage, a group called Mantoman, Bronski Beat with Small Town Boy. I mean, a lot of people knew my name and wanted to do stuff with me. You know, I got to do that stuff. And most of them were ripped off and didn't have money. And I can't really pay you, but, you know, can we put something out? And I'm like, all right, you know. So, yeah, it became what happened to them. A lot of you guys that are watching think that was the end of my music career. I kept doing music, you know, and I have 120 tracks out now. But somebody said, "Oh, you haven't done anything since Hip Hop, Bebop, and Boogie Down Bronx," because that's the last thing that they knew, because there was about 10 years gap in there. And they just, all right, well, that's an old school dude. He's not doing any more music, you know.
So you had to work with Michael Jackson. Did you get to meet him?
Yeah. So I performed at Studio 54. I was living in a loft with 6 people. One of the guys was Joey Arias, who I love. He's a New York legend. He was working at a place called Fiorucci, which had jeans also as an Italian store. So 10th anniversary. I used to go to Studio 54 every weekend because my friend Linda was fucking the doorman, and we can get in no matter what. And when there was a crowd outside, we used to go in a little gremlin and park it in the public parking lot next door. And then when a limousine would come up, we'd ride right alongside the limousine like Secret Service, duck down. The door would open, and then we would get, you know, the door would close, and we would be right behind the last people and stand up and follow them in. until the doorman figured out what's going on. And I think she gave him a hand job or a blow job. And then we got in all the time because he realized what was going on. Right. So when it came to playing at Studio 54, Fiorucci had to do a 10-year anniversary party. And they were doing it at Studio 54 because they were really connected with celebrities. Joey, who was the manager of the store, said, we should get Manny, my roommate. We have a song, Hip Hop Bebop. I'm in the show with him. You know, where's Joey? Joey is that guy there.
Okay.
On that side. And he said, let's get Manny to play his records all over the radio. And they said, sure, okay. So my mother had died, and I went straight from the funeral, the cemetery, to Studio 54 for the sound check. And my head was like, so they said, do you want to make an entrance? And, you know, I was crazy. I said, sure, I want to fly in from the ceiling. They said, okay, no problem. I didn't think they were going to say yes. They said, no problem. They lower down this little burnt trapeze. They weigh you and they counterweight you. So the guy is only pulling 5 or 10 pounds of weight difference. And it was this little guy, and he said, like 3 feet, I'm going to fly you. And I thought, oh my God, this ceiling is like 3 stories high or 4 stories high. It was a theater. They had to put whole sets up there, you know, and lights. Mm-hmm. So that night, they pulled down a scrim, you know, a wall. Studio 54 had all these walls and sets that used to come down, and they timed it with the DJ. They pulled down the wall. I had that, you can't see it, but I had if you look up old pictures, I had a jumpsuit with a cape, very Darth Vader, and we'd have a dry ice pipe, and all this smoke would come out on the stage under blue light. We had this creature, because we were into Dark Crystal and all this lame shit, because we thought it was cool, and this creature would come and pull the hood off, and I'd be underneath, you know, this pipe would go away, and there I was, you know, with glitter robot spray all over my face, you know what I mean? Playing in Camden, New Jersey, the only white dude, and everybody, and the hood would come off, and oh shit, it's a white guy, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna get shot, you know what I mean? And then the beat dropped, and then we were okay. But Studio 54, they put me on this little seat, and they pull me up, and they said, right after the song, about 2 minutes, your song's going to go on, and the show's going to start. We'll dim the lights, and you'll come down from the ceiling. And I said, great. So he said, don't swing back and forth because there's about 10,000 watts of neon. You'll get electrocuted, and all the neon will shatter, you know, and the celebrities dancing above. So they pull me up, and people were like this big. I swear to God, they were like this big on the floor. I'm on a little bird perch. I'm telling you, it was maybe this thick, right? And where is it? Wait, sorry. It was like that thick. And I was in this heavy corduroy thing, and that's the old days with 1,000-watt bulb. So it must have been 110 degrees, 120 degrees, and I'm slipping, and I'm sliding off this thing, and I'm trying to put myself back up on, and my hands aren't gripping, and now the thing is sliding back and forth, and I'm getting really close to the neon, and I'm flipping out, and the song ends, and I thought, okay, great, and then another song comes on, and I'm like, no. And then I'm trying to like readjust myself, and then the thing would swing back and forth, and I thought, oh fuck, you know. And I thought, all right, the song's ending. I know the song; it's going to end. These are 5-10 minute songs, and another song comes on. Now I'm up there 15 minutes, 18 minutes, and I start freaking out. It's a really loud sound system. I'm going, help! 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 I'm flipping the fuck out. Of course, nobody could hear me. A third song came on. I was up there 15 or 18 minutes, and then finally came down. The guy who was doing the dry ice on the stage was an alcoholic. Instead of putting 2 inches on dry ice, he put about 10 feet of dry ice. And I thought, oh, the stage bottom is here, which is way above my head, maybe, up to like a ceiling. I thought, I'm just going to jump off and land there. I wound up dropping almost 2 stories off the stage into a cloud of smoke. And the whole first song was buried in smoke, and people thought it was the coolest thing they ever saw. But it was just a show. And my opening act was a girl that was unknown at the time, and her name was Madonna.
Well, Madonna, you've talked about Madonna a couple of times working with her.
Me?
Give us your impressions of Madonna. What did you think of Madonna when you first met her and worked with her? How was she?
Madonna was Madonna. Studio 54, there was an incident where our clothes went missing before we went on stage. We were told by one of her dancers that the clothes were intentionally hidden because she wanted to go on first at 12 o'clock and not at 2 o'clock when less people were there. When I played at the Red Parrot, we were on first, Planet Patrol second, and then, or the other way, Planet Patrol first. I can't remember. No, I was on first at midnight, Planet Patrol at 1, and Madonna at 2. And she got off stage and she was screaming at the manager that I ruined the audience because everybody was yelling and screaming. And by the time I came around to her show, people had left or they were too tired to worship her whenever she wanted.
What did she have out at the time? Holiday and
at that time it was, I think it was Holiday. Yeah, it was one. What was it? I guess it was Holiday. Yeah, it was one of the first.
That was one of the first ones out.
And then we played out in the Hamptons for all the rich people once, and there was another show somewhere too.
Mm-hmm. Now you talk a couple of times. I know that
I was on the front covers of the press in England as fucking Madonna. I can tell you that story. I had the Mantoman record, and I had to go over there to do a mix. I still wasn't paid on it, but I wasn't allowed to enter the country illegally. I'd have to have working papers, so I came in as a tourist. And this crazy queen from the record company was doing promotion. I land, and I'm in like sweatpants and a sweatshirt and bus head. You know what I mean? Like leaning one side and looking really like shit. And he said, "Manny, welcome to England. Oh, by the way, you're going to have to do a few interviews." I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You see all those people over there?" He said, "That's the press." And I said, "Well, what do they want with me?" But our record was charting. He goes, "Oops, I told them you're fucking Madonna. Come on, we have a press conference set up." And I went, "Oh, what do you want? What?" He says, "Come on, darling, I'll take care of it." I said, "Give me your sunglasses." I put the sunglasses on because I couldn't look at anybody. We go to a hotel. There's a little dais laid out. And I got up and it's snapping a couple of pictures. And the first person said, this woman, "So, what's it like having sex with Madonna?" And I went, "Oh, fuck." And she goes, "Man, he's got scratch marks down his back because he does it so well." And I thought, oh, my God. What about Sean Penn? They call him Poison Penn. They both hate him, and she's leaving him for men. And I thought, this is getting crazy. And another, "Oh, excuse me, sir, but how does Madonna get into Manny's house?" He's got a maid, Beulah, who's got a blue Ford, wraps her up in a blanket, goes right by the side door, and she quickly runs in so the press can't follow her, and they have wild sex. And I thought, this is so fucking crazy. They're never going to print this. I was at a hotel where you had to put 5 pence pieces in to get heat. That's what kind of budget we're talking about, this record label, all right? I'm freezing my ass off in dreary London. I was jet lagged. The next day, he knocks on the door, and I go, what? He throws the newspaper down on the bed, and at the bottom of it says, "Madonna longs for my baby," and has a picture of me. I said, "Oh my God, I'm going to get sued." He goes, "It's England, darling. They can't sue you." And I thought, okay. He goes, "Hurry up, get dressed. We're going to have lunch." I said, "I don't have any money." He goes, "No, I've arranged lunch all week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the Peppermint Park so we can eat for free all week, but you have to do interviews." And I said, "I'm not doing interviews." He goes, "Don't worry, darling, I'll take care of it." And I said, "You've already taken care of it." He goes, "Just shut up." So we would go and have lunch, breakfast, and go back to the plate. We'd walk around the block and come back again. And we told the waiter, "Shut up." You know what I mean? And then I remember getting on the subway, going back to the hotel, and the guy across from me had the paper open, and on the bottom of the paper was my picture. I'll never forget that I was sleeping with Madonna. So the press followed us around, and Madonna's brother had a TV show in Chicago on cable or something like that, and wanted to confront me about having sex with his sister. And of course I turned it down. But I got scared when my father called from New York. We were there about a week and a half. And he said, "The National Enquirer and a couple of other papers are calling and want to know what's going on with you, Madonna." I said, "Dad, don't answer the phone. Don't answer the phone. I'll ring twice, hang up, and call back if it's me. Otherwise, don't answer the phone." And I got scared, and I thought I was going to get sued. So I told this kid, I said, "I'm not doing any more interviews. It's over. I didn't fuck Madonna," so on and so on and so on. He says, this was like Lucy and Ethel. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's always something going on. He goes, "Great, I got an idea." And I thought, oh my God, no more ideas. He goes, "No, I'm going to get the girl from the office and we'll put her in, you know, like a little bikini top. And we're going to rent a hotel room. But I know this hotel where all the balconies are connected. We're going to get the guy to let him into the place next door. You're going to be in bed with her. Just pull the cover down to just, you know, her bikini. And you lie in bed with your back to the window and pretend like you're making out or something like that. And I'm going to have the guy sneak on the balcony and he's going to get an exclusive of you cheating with Madonna. I swear, this is all the fucking truth, right? So I'm lying in bed and we're laughing and we're talking. And she goes, ooh, 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 there's somebody out on the balcony. I said, really? She goes, yeah, yeah. And I turn around and I go, hey, you. And there's a picture of me like that. Like, and it said,
like you're outraged.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it said, caught Madonna's cheating kiss and tell lover. You know what I mean? And that made the English papers. And it was so insane.
Did she ever say anything to you about it?
Never said a thing. I mean, I definitely helped her. I put her on the front cover of the English press for over a week, and she knew about it. Of course, she knew about. I mean, you know, who wouldn't call her or the record labels? You're on the cover, you know, with that fatto for whatever someone said. You know,
was she dating Jelly Bean at the time? Or no?
Yeah. So there's a place called the Fun House in New York, which is one of the first warehouse places. It had a Richard Long sound system, which had 30-inch cabinets, not 15s, 30s. There weren't 18s. There were 30-inch woofers, custom made. I used to be able to walk into the cabinets. I remember they were like, you know, 6 feet high or something like that. And whenever we used to drop off acetates or test pressings or first pressings there, and John, I know him, John Benitez, Jelly Bean Benitez was the DJ. And the DJ booth was like the size of your living room. It was like, with couches, and Arthur Baker would be hanging out and all these people. And there was this girl who had a black shirt on with hairy armpits. Her arms would be up like this. And on the front of the t-shirt, she had long black hair. We used to call her the skank. And had a t-shirt on that said, I'm Madonna. So, yeah, I remember her. I remember her from way back.
Yeah, I'm getting lit up with questions, man.
Well, let's do it.
That's why I keep looking down. Hey, everybody,
hey,
I'm not being rude.
Thank you.
I'm not being rude to man Parrish, but I can't.
No, let's do it, man. I don't shut up. So let's do it.
I gotta ask you question number one. Did the group Rama and the song "Don't Want You to Be"? A lot of guys that we used to b-boy and dance with, they love that song. A lot of the girls love the song. Who wrote that? How did it come about? Tell us the story.
So the name Rama is R-A for Raul, M-A for Manny, Rama. And Raul did lyrics. I wrote the music. And Raul would get session singers because in those days there were a lot of guys and girls that would show up for $50 and sing. So, you know, that was that. And I sampled one of the voices, you know, that little emulate. Yeah, that's a sample thing playing up and down the keyboard because John Roby kind of made that famous with AEIOU.
Right.
You know? And everybody wanted to emulate that. And I had a sampler. So R-A-M-A, Rama, Raul, and Manny, R-A-M-A.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. Well, that song, like I said, that is another classic that people love to hear. I can still play that one.
Wow.
People
Let's knock out these questions. Let's go for some questions.
Okay. Next question. Whatever happened to Sugar Scoop Records?
All right. So the guy who owned Disconet had Import 12 and Sugar Scoop. He later died of AIDS from all the drugs and the MDA and Coke and all the shit that he did. He was a gay guy. And it was the beginning of when that virus was out and he would die in 3 to 6 months. Before he died, he had dementia. I had left the record company. I got a call one day that he was in Dallas, Texas. He had broken away from the hospital in New York, got on a flight, went to Dallas, Texas in his pajamas and bathrobe. And I don't know why the airline didn't stop him. But she called me and she said, I know you're not happy with Michael, but he's the only person that he'll listen. You're the only person he'll listen to. I've arranged. They're holding him in a hospital. Can you go and bring him back to New York by plane? And I thought, here's this guy that fucked me out of millions of dollars, but I'm a good guy. This is somebody suffering. I went and I got him back, and never saw him after he died. And with that, Sugar Scoop, Disconet, and Import 12 stayed open for a couple of years. there were two guys who ran the office. They had a really bad coke habit, and they started. They were selling records, and when there weren't follow-ups, he started selling the back catalog that they owned. One of them was my record, and the both of them went up to Canada, forged my name on a fake release form, and sold Hip Hop Bebop to Unidisc Records in Canada for $1,000, and blew the money on a Friday and Saturday night on a coke binge in Toronto and came home. And how do I know this? Because one of those guys turned out later to be a very good friend of mine who worked with me in the club when I had my club nights. He told me the whole story.
Yeah, that's low. You know?
So when that collapsed, Sugar Scoop, Import 12, and DiscoNet all went down.
All went down? Wow.
Yeah.
So,
I got some stories, man. This is cool.
Another question we got. So you mentioned some of your contemporaries. This one's a text. I got John Roby and Mark Berry. You know, whatever happened to them?
I just spoke to Mark Berry. Mark Berry has a successful company in Canada. He does music production, film, and I think TV stuff. We were just talking this afternoon about a project that we could maybe, with throwing some ideas around about stuff in those old days and doing a documentary, the New York documentary, that stuff. John Roby is, I think he's on Long Island. I think John Roby got, this is in my personal opinion, I think he got kind of really banged up and hurt. I mean, the rumor is by more than one person that, let's put it this way. I know he sued Arthur Baker because for money. What the outcome is, I don't know, but I think John Roby got blown out by it. He did so many records, you know, Freeze, AEIO. He was a keyboard player and played these incredible things. On my record, the record company, Raul and Mike Wilkinson, who owned Sugar Scoop and Import 12, invited him in to do overdubs on my record and didn't pay him. But what they did is they offered him a third of my publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Without even asking me, and I didn't know that till years later. He would have been paid $100 to come in for an hour or two and played, but wound up getting a third of my music. You know, so John's, I think he's in Long Island. He's on Facebook, but he's kind of just recluse. You know, Raul Rodriguez wound up drinking himself to death.
Oh wow!
He used to like his beer. And then there was no work after that, all fell apart. And he was struggling to DJ. I spoke to him about a year before he passed away, which is about 4 or 5 years ago. He was working a night shift as a doorman on the Upper West Side in New York. He said, please don't tell anybody. I'm so embarrassed. I don't want anybody to know that I was a doorman. I said, Rahul, you know, I'm not doing much better. I'm working I have a party called Sperm every Sunday night at a bar called The Cock. It's not something I'm broadcasting all over the place, but I'm doing what I got to do to get myself through. So don't worry about it, buddy. And he said, well, I've been on and off drinking and trying to get sober. And then I heard that he passed away. And it was, you know, this is what happens. It breaks your heart. It breaks your soul. So that's those guys.
Man. Okay, and I get a question. Mr. Arthur Baker. This question is pretty detailed. Okay, so Mr. Arthur Baker, producer of Planet Rock and Looking for the Perfect Beat. They see John Roby's name on there. You know, I know you had told me a story about being in the studio with Bambaataa and them when they made Planet Rock. So how much of that is Arthur Baker? How much of it is John Roby?
I would say a good half and half. So Bambaataa or Bam, he wrote the rhyme, but he didn't do the music. So Arthur's here down in Miami. Arthur was smart enough as a producer to be connected and get Bambaataa and listening to Kraftwerk and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know what his relationship with Roby was, but I don't know whether he hired him as a studio musician and wound up keeping him, or they were friends before. But Arthur was great at those kind of connections. You know, oh, he'd be great with that. Let's go ahead and do this kind of thing. So, and he would be like, no, you got to make it more like this. No, you got to make it more like that. John Roby was a great keyboard player. He was one of the other guys, and it's another guy, Rob, something Kilpatrick. I want to say Robbie Kilpatrick or something like that. I can't remember his name. The three of us had synthesizers, but John Roby had the chops. So there was a studio in New York Vanguard that I was talking about, and it had like you'd come in through the hallway door. It was in the hallway of an apartment building. There were just two doors there, and you'd go through the lobby, past the doorman. I'm going to the studio, and the door would open, and there'd be an outer room, a green room with a glass, and we'd usually get there ahead of time. We didn't want to be late because we only had 3 hours to do it, so we made sure we were always on time. And I remember several times, I remember Planet Rock, Bambaataa would be lying on the couch with his Dr. Pepper like this and drinking his Dr. Pepper. And they'd be doing something. Come on, Bam, get up, boy. All right. Party people. Oh, and they come back and like be back on the couch and chilling out and all that kind of stuff. And, Arthur's running, the tape recorder. I mean, Mark Berry's running the tape recorder. Arthur's, telling him what to do, and John Roby's laying down a lot of the tracks and programming the synthesizers, and stuff like that. So it's not all Arthur. I did some stuff for Arthur, and it disappeared and wound up on a movie soundtrack that he did.
A Beat Street?
A Beat Street, yeah. Roll and I did stuff in his studio. We were going to do a record, and we got locked out of the studio. Arthur was great for taking Planet Rock, making a copy of it, and then pulling out a lot of the stuff, putting some new stuff on it and calling it Perfect Beat. And then, a lot of those records sound the same because they are the same, you know what I mean? They just follow the same formula. But Raul said, I can't believe it. I just saw the trailer for, or the movie, Beat Street. He said, you remember that song that we did? And I said, yeah. He goes, listen to the bass and the drums. And we never finished it. We only got part of the way through. He goes, that's our track. And it's like, what am I going to do?
Speaking of Beat Street, I look at that as a movie that really had an opportunity to get the music that you guys did, that Shannon did, Hashim, all the stuff that you guys did, and really make a cold soundtrack. It kind of made a kind of goofy soundtrack. I was listening, we was watching the movie the other day. It came on, and we were all stuck in the snow while you were down there in nice scenic Florida.
That's right, motherfucker. Yeah.
Beat Street comes on, and I'm watching it. And I'm just looking like, man, the DJs do a few cuts, would play that beat and, let the music play. But other than that, the original compositions they use, you would think they would have just licensed the music you guys did.
No, because it would have been expensive in those days. It still is, but it would have been $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. And if you have 10 songs, it's a couple $100,000 in a budget of a movie that wasn't a big budget. So they probably didn't license it. And you mentioned something about DJs would make it, kind of in those days, unlike today, a lot of DJs became producers, right? Mm-hmm. I was a producer for 10 or 15 years, and I had the DJ because I had a club night. But DJs and producers were separate people. They ran in totally two different things. A producer would go to a DJ to play their record or beg them or give them a bag of Coke or a blowjob or whatever they did to get their record played. So it was two different worlds. So it's not like you would get a really cool soundtrack that a DJ could sequence and this is good to listen. They just threw shit out because, let's make a couple of extra bucks and do the soundtrack. And that's about all they thought of it.
Mm. Well, there was a couple good. Breaker's Revenge, I think we got used to that one.
Let's knock out some questions.
Oh, okay. Question number again. Let's see what else we got here.
Keep the people happy.
How was it being in New York during the time when everybody was really breakdancing to your music? How was it being part of the foundations of hip hop?
Lots of easy, free, available sex everywhere. I didn't run in hip hop circles, so I was out getting my dick sucked. That's true. New York was a very different place. Now it's totally destroyed and it's going to take years to come back. That's a whole other trip. But there was no It was very inclusive. There was no racial shit going on then. I mean, you wouldn't get a bunch of white boys going up to Harlem, you know what I mean, and chilling with your homies. It wasn't like that. But, you know, there wasn't the bullshit that there seems to be now, you know, and it's way worse now. Urban was, you know, there was a new movement coming up, and it was urban music. You know, like I said, there was rock and roll, dance, and at that time, disco. So if you weren't playing funk like Parliament, there was nothing that was yours if you were from the streets, right? And this new sound came up, which was street sound, and it was about b-boys or just, you know, Jenny from the block, who's so far from a block that I don't know what block she's from, but you know what I mean. I mean, it's like if you hung out in the park, if you hung out in the streets, because we didn't have internet, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have stuff like this where you're in your house. You had to go out and hang out in the streets to be with people. So it was kind of like a people thing. So it was a whole new movement, and it was exciting to be part of that, right?
Wow.
But I wasn't going up to, I mean, I played at the, you know, I used to go up to the Fever to listen to music and that, but, you know, I wasn't holding breakdance competitions outside my door or anything like that, you know. But
See, you ruined
our
how we envisioned you.
Yeah, right. I mean, you know, I was a fucking white gay fag from New York, you know what I mean? And you know, I went cruising at a gay bar at night because I wanted to get laid, you know, and they weren't playing hip hop, they were playing Heatstroke. It's really weird because Heatstroke played in the gay clubs, Hip Hop Boogie Down Bronx were in the street clubs, Man-Made and those sort of things. Techno tracks are being played in places like the new wave clubs like Dance Interior. So wherever I went out, I heard music that I wasn't getting paid on, but there was a very big segregation. You wouldn't get Heatstroke being played in a hip hop club. And the thing I talk about hip hop was not what it is today, which is rhyme and rap and all that. And there was rhyme and rap, and then there was hip hop, and hip hop was jazz slang for dancing. So hip hop, bebop, hips hopping is dancing, bebop is music, don't stop. Hip hop, dance to the music, don't stop. Hip hop, bebop, don't stop. Right? The music that we were doing, Planet Rock, that was all dance music. That was party music. That was fun music. That was like Rapper's Delight. It was an electronic version of that. You just, we're all together. We're all going to have fun. No bullshit. No prejudice. No drama. And that's what hip hop was. And then later it became music incorporated by rhyme and rap and all that kind of stuff. But back then it was just dance, street dance music. And it was called hip hop for about 4 or 5 years. And then it converted over.
Next question we got. None of us knew you may watch the closing doors. How did that happen?
Hunger. We were fucking hungry, and I can't remember the label. And Raul said, "Come on, dude, let's do another record." And I was like, "Raul, I don't want to do another record. We're not going to get paid. I need the money." I said, "Oh, I do too. How much are they paying?" $200. No, tell them we want more. Oh, I don't know. Let me try. He said he'll give us $350. I said, tell him to go fuck himself. No way. And this is like a year after Hip Hop Bebop's out, you know, a while after Hip Hop Bebop's out. All right, he'll give us 500, 200, 250 each. I said, I'll do it. I'm hungry. I'll do it. And then we just go in for 8 hours and make up a record and deliver to them the next day, and they'd write a check. And I was the only one with a bank account, so I'd cash it and go get the money from the ATM and give it to Raul. And then my bank account was probably zero, $5 afterwards. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Because you know, we look at people listening to the song. I remember when it came out, we played it. We loved the break when he would, you know, when he go, "Here's Julio break into his radio," dun, 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 which has been sampled a lot by house people, by the way, in Chicago and New York.
I did have sampler back then, but it was the Emulator 1, and it was huge. It was like a Hammond organ. It weighed like 75 pounds, and it was all steel, and you could only sample 1 second or 2 seconds, and it was in mono at half audio quality or something like that. You know what I mean? So We didn't use a lot of samples because it was a pain in the ass. But if you did, it was
Yeah.
special. You know, all that was. And here's the other thing: synthesizers back then didn't have programs. You didn't press a button and pop up the drums or the, or the bass line. You had to tune oscillators and send it through a filter and move the envelope generator. And all that stuff may sound weird to people, but we had to program that shit by hand.
Yeah.
And then if you went back the next day, give me that sound that you got me on, you know, that record, like, it's gone. If you didn't use it right then and there,
it was over with.
if you shut it off and didn't touch it and came back the next day, there used to be signs in the studio, program synthesizer, do not touch. But you'd come back the next day, the session ran out, and they're going to come back the next day. Do not touch, written, you know, on paper on top. You come back the next day, turn it on, and those were analog oscillators and analog filters, and they would warm up, and the circuits would expand, and the sound would be like way different.
Okay.
So you had to record it right then and there, or you're fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the old days, kiddies, when we used to, our samplers were only 2 seconds.
Did another New York question about New York? Did you know the Latin Rascals back in the day?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we didn't hang out, but Latin Rascals were very important, and also Animal Diaz. They were cutting tape with razor blades, and they would do. I mean, I knew they were DJs, and they'd have their shows sometimes on the radio, or they'd have special nights at places like the Roxy, which was a roller skating rink that held, 2,000 people, 3,000 people, because roller disco was still happening in many places. You go Tuesday night and roller skate, you know what I mean, and listen to all that stuff on a big sound system. But Latin Rascals, Jose Animal Diaz, you'd give them their record, and you'd give them usually 2 or 3 copies of. They usually ask for someone asked for 1, someone asked for 2 or 3 tapes of your master, and they would take a razor blade, and you'd figure out if one beat was this long, a half a beat was this long, a quarter beat was this long, an eighth of a beat was that long, a 16th beat, and they would take drum things and lay them out. That's how all that stutter edit came about. They were doing stuff by hand that would take a weekend to do, a couple of stutter edits on a song because it was labor intensive. I was then one of the first people in New York City. I don't know how I got my mother to pay for it. Oh, I know how I got my mother to pay for it. I told her, if you didn't buy me this, it was the first Macintosh Quadra computer. I can't remember which one. It was a very early Macintosh, Mac 2C computer. And they had, for $6,000, DigiDesign had a sound card that can sample in stereo and record to a 10 megabyte drive, which is considered immense. And then I could take sound and digitally edit. And now I was the first person in the city. And I told my mother, said, I'm not paying $5,000 or whatever it is for that. I said, if you don't, I'm going to become a male prostitute and sell drugs. So you better give me the money. And she said, oh, I think I'm going to talk to your father. I said, okay. And guess what? We went shopping on the credit card. But I know Latin Rascals because then I was able to do digital edits like they did, stutter edits and all that.
Those that make me listen to their songs, Once Upon a Time and I Feel, or it was what I Want It to Be Real.
I mean, it's not like the kind of thing where we all hang out in a lounge, or there was a club that we all went to the VIP lounge and all.
That's how we envisioned you guys. You guys just hang out.
I mean, I always envision, my favorite, celebrities. They'll all be hanging out, and it's red velvet walls and smoky with a couple of pin spotlights and girls with big tits serving you champagne, and all that kind of stuff, But nah. I mean, we knew of each other, we respected each other, and even if we went to places, you didn't see a lot of people. Like if you went to, I remember seeing Arthur Baker and Madonna and Jelly Bean in his DJ booth because it was kind of cool to hang out there because it was huge. But clubs were hot, unair conditioned. They had very hot lights because it wasn't LED, and DJ, you didn't hang out on the floor because it was just like loud and messy. You know what I mean? If you work in a restaurant, you don't want to go out and eat after that. If you work at a bar, you know what I mean? The last thing you want to do is go to a bar. Same thing with music. you kind of, if you DJ'd, you didn't want to go hang out in the club, you know, because what happened is you got crazy. It's like, this music sucks. Can do better than this. So, you know, you were home making music.
You've been there before when you
Yeah, so
listen to
you know what
DJ
I'm
Life.
talking about. Yeah. New York was a
Okay.
very special place because it wasn't a big community. The people that New York was a business place and people went to work. There weren't many clubs in the beginning. So if you weren't at the Fever, you weren't at the Fun House, or you know, if you're new wave music, you weren't at Danceteria or rock and roll at Max's Kansas City or CBGB's. I mean, I saw Bruce Springsteen before he became famous, get booed off the stage for playing an acoustic guitar set at Max's Kansas City. Aerosmith used to come down in a van, play Max's in front of maybe 30 people, and then stand outside and try to get pussy at the end of the night. I mean, they were nobody. I saw so many groups, you know, like that, famous groups. It was a small town. I mean, there was a lot of people, but if you were doing music or any of that kind of stuff, there were not that many people doing it. So you ran into people or hung out with people. And I wasn't a musician, so I couldn't hang out with musicians, and I wasn't a DJ, so DJs didn't hang out with producers because they were like different worlds, you know. And they were DJs.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So when I know you talked about spinning records that you were a producer first.
Yeah.
When did you become a DJ?
All right, so I was so broke and so poor. I was working at a straight sex club, fetish sex club, where they used to spank people. I'm not getting spanked, not into it, but I was working on the door because I'm 6'4", with a big gut. And I used to work next to this woman, Candy, who used to file her fingernails into little points. And she was a dominatrix with leather and all that kind of stuff. And if I was at the door, they were less likely to get robbed. So I couldn't take it anymore. Not because it was a sex club, but I had to figure something else out. And this guy come in that I knew. He goes, there's a new bar that opened on the east side, and they're looking for people to do a night. And I'd love to do a night. You want to join up with me? And I said, great. And I remember we went for an interview. I didn't even know what the name of the place was. It had a red rooster outside. And I didn't know what the place was. And he said, all right, we just opened like last month. I'll give you Sunday night. He said, okay. When we left, we were on the subway going home. He said, what do you want to call it? I said, I don't know. It's got to have like I wanted to be creative and an artistic beginning, like a new seed. He goes, Sperm. And I said, great. It's so fucked up. He goes, by the way, the name of the bar is The Cock. It's a red rooster. There's a red rooster outside, but everybody calls the rooster a cock, blah, blah, yeah. So it became The Cock. And I just figured I'm into music. I went out and that was when you had CDs. I went out and bought a bunch of CDs, and I was DJing like a tranny. One record would end, and then the next record would start. If you ever see how trannies DJ, then that don't mix. I didn't know how to blend music, but I would go home and practice it. And I was playing shit that I wanted to hear. And the capacity of the club was 87 people. And the first week there were 10 people. The second week there were 20 people. And then we started decorating the club every weekend. We'd spend 8 hours turning it into, you know, wrap the place in plastic or wrap it in velvet or fake fur. Or every time I bought lights, I put the money back into it. And I bought lasers and lights. And it just, this tiny little bodega storefront just got bigger and bigger. And we went from 87 people. I think the biggest capacity we had was 480 people. I mean, you were so packed in this tiny little place, and people started dancing and the floor started buckling. And I thought, it's going to collapse. We got to do something. And I remember it was the summer the air conditioner broke, and I got on the microphone. I said, everybody, the AC is broken. Please be quiet. We got to open up all the doors, and we're going to put fans at the doors, but we're overcrowded. We don't want to be shut down, so be quiet. And for 20 minutes, we let the cooler air come in, cooled it off, closed the doors again. The naked go-go dancers went back up on the bar. People in the back went to having sex. People doing coke in the bathroom, and the music and the lights went on, and we still had a party. I was the longest running party in New York City. And a lot of you DJ guys know that parties last a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, if you're maybe lucky. I ran 15 years every Sunday without ever missing a beat.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
We had uh, um, uh, I call her Broccoli Spears. I can't even remember her.
Brittany.
Britney Spears came in. She threw up in the bathroom, and they were like, "Quick, put it in a bag. We'll sell it on eBay. Put her vomit." I have a very famous Broadway producer that if I mention his name, you'll know him, and I can't. He came into the bar, and I turn around halfway through the night, and he's standing there in a shirt with no pants on, with his dick and balls hanging out. I said, blah, blah. I won't say his name. I said, what happened? He goes, I don't know, Manny. I lost my pants in the back. I can't find them. And I went, you know, if all I need is a photographer. I said, how are we getting this fucking guy home? We had to go next door. There was a restaurant. And I said, excuse me, can we borrow a tablecloth? One of our clients lost their pants and we got to send them home in a cab.
That's hilarious.
Oh my God. And freaks, it became the place for trannies, freaks, drug addicts, people. We had guys that would come out of jail, broke, stand on the bar, get naked, swinging their dicks, doing the helicopter for dollars because they needed bus fare to get back to Pennsylvania or New Jersey. I mean, we were known as the insane asylum in New York, where you could come and party and nobody bothered you and you could do crazy shit. We had a lot of famous people come. You know, and nobody bothered them, and the mentally insane. It was fantastic.
Wow.
If you want to see what the party's about, if you go to PARRISH Stories on YouTube, I talk about the sperm video, and at the very end, I think it's the only way you can see it. There's a link to my sperm party, and you can see all the crazy freaks and all the crazy shit that went on. I'm lucky. I brought in a video camera, a night vision video camera, and I have a lot of stuff I can't even show.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we are going on an hour and a half. So what I'd like to do, if you'd be so kind, well, I want to make sure everything's chopped up. If you'd be so kind, I'd like to do. Yeah, I answered all the ones that I had because they were mostly duplicates. But looks like people want to hear more about your life. So what I'd like to do is, if you are able to, is schedule a part 2.
Yeah.
Maybe for a week from now, if that's okay with you.
Sure. If I'm not watching porn, then I have the bandwidth. Definitely. Hey, listen. When you get older, I'm 62, man. You know what I mean? I'm a gay 62, so I look good. But when you get older, sex is only up here. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, do I have to get naked and get in front of somebody and actually do it? Nah. I'm just gonna. It's all in your mind. That's why they have dirty old men with like dirty old mind. Yeah, it's all in your brain. You know what I mean? I'd love to do it. If people can't make that and want to hear some really great stories, I'm on YouTube as PARRISH Stories, 3 words, STORIES. And I was going to write a book, but I put, you know, I testified against the mafia. Freddie Mercury tried to pick me up in a bar. Yeah, I was a male prostitute. I mean, I could go on for crazy stories that are all true. Go to PARRISH Stories on YouTube. And I broke it into what I call seasons because I got up every day for a month, month and 10 days. I had 40 stories that I told. And there's season 1, 2, 3, 4. They're about 5, 7, 10, some maybe 15 minutes long. I ran away from home. My mother was crazy. And I was a 14-year-old boy roaming around New York, and who's going to pick me up at a pedophile? I was actually part of a pedophile ring with young boys that I didn't really put 2 and 2 together until later on. I had people kill themselves in front of me. I mean, you don't like the stories are crazy, but if you want to go and learn more, that's there. If not, you want to come back here and tune into this maybe next week. Stay tuned to this dude because where is he? He's this side. Wait, it's reverse. Where are you? You're over.
There.
Over there. Yeah. This guy the other over there. You go him because he's been real good to me and he knows his shit. So thank you for this.
I appreciate you coming on. You know, like I said, we did some pretty good numbers.
Yeah. Oh, good.
2 things I want to say.
Somebody tuned in and watched. Wow.
Yes, quite a few people. 2 things I want to say. We're going to do this again next week. Go to PARRISH's site. Again, I'll go to his YouTube page, PARRISH Stories. It's on YouTube. Look him up.
PARRISH Artist on Facebook and Instagram. That's one word, PARRISH Artist. One N,
now,
2 R's.
Now, what I'm going to say to my DJ friends out there, later tonight or tomorrow, I'm going to put up a GoFundMe. and me and Man Parrish are going to talk about it a bit and what we're going to give people, what he's going to give people. All of you guys, I know y'all got 6 to 7 to 12 copies of Hip Hop Bebop on Unidisc and freaking Ram's Horn and blank labels and all that stuff, you know. And I think that, you know, those of us who've used and played his music, enjoyed Man's music, enjoyed his music, and have shared his music with people and let the world. I'm not going to talk about how many
I think he's
downloads
trying to
y'all
say
got.
I never got paid. I never
Yeah,
got
he didn't
paid.
get paid. So, you know, we're going to kick it off where, you know, $5 to get you one thing, 10 to get you another, 20 to get you another. I'm going to put it up there on
I'm going to
Facebook.
show you guys something real fast, and this isn't a pity thing. I'm diabetic. That's a insulin pump, and that's a glucose monitor. My insurance doesn't cover it. I've got to come up with money every month just to stay alive. And I've had all these fucking records out. It fucking sucks. I mean, it sucks. It's unbelievable. I'm not begging for money, but
No, and honestly speaking, you know, everybody, yeah, this not
Richard is
this.
saying that he thought it'd be a good idea if you download it or you got it. If you could throw a couple of bucks, if you could. I'm
Yeah,
not going on a vacation or buying a yacht. I'm paying for insulin and my diabetic
and
supplies.
it's only the fair thing to do, guys. I mean, guys and gals, DJs, y'all know who you are. We all, you know, we got flash drives, we got downloads of the songs, and the bottom line, we bought them, you know. But as you see from these stories, you know, Man Parrish and Raw Rodriguez and John Carter and John Roby, these guys got ripped off of a lot of stuff. So
John
like our
Carter
guys,
lost his
yeah,
voice because of this. He couldn't
oh,
speak. Yeah, it was like talking like this for like a couple of years because it screwed him up so bad. It's a harsh business, but you don't have to buy or donate anything to listen to these things or to listen to my stories. If you can and it's out of love, that's great. If you can't, that's totally cool too. Please listen in. And all these stories are for a reason. It's not just to say, hey, I did this, I did that. I'm trying to show with my Man Parrish stories. I've been through a lot of hard shit. If I could do it, you could do it, and that's the reason I tell the stories. You know, it's not about, oh yeah, you know, I know Madonna or I saw this person. That it's that I've been through highs and not paid. I've been through lows, really bad depressions. But if I could do it, you guys could do it. So hang in there, and whatever the fuck it is, eyes on the prize. You know, stay with your dream. You know, and
well, I appreciate this. I told Man Parrish the other day when I was talking, we were on the phone for like 2.5 hours. I said, this is the next best thing. I said, you're right up there. Like if got to talk to Prince, that's how I look at it. You know, he was all shocked. I'm like, man, please, I played your music, and those who know me know I used to get down and b-boy to your music.
tell
So
the
man,
Prince story that I told you about the guy in the studio. What do you want me to tell it?
oh yeah, go ahead, tell us a story about Prince.
So of course I love Prince. Everybody loves Prince. After Prince died, I got a thing on instant messenger on Facebook, and some guy said, "Oh, I used to work for Prince. He used to listen to his music because after he died, I posted something really, you know, like Prince is God and all that kind of stuff." And he private messaged me. He said, "You know, I used to work with Prince. He used to listen to his music and your music." And I go, "You know, yeah, right. Okay, you're one of those crazies, but okay, thank you. You know what I mean?" And then he goes, I thought you would reply like that. And I just said, like, okay, cool. He said, I'm going to send you some pictures. Look at my Facebook profile and then look at these pictures. And he was working he told me he worked at Paisley Park as like one of the second engineers or something like that. And there he is with Prince, right? You know, hanging out. And he said, Prince used to listen to a lot of different music and yours was definitely one. And he would play it a lot. And a lot of people too. He says, too bad Prince didn't know your story because he would have gotten lawyers and sued and got you your money because he did that for a lot of people, but he did it under the condition that it was anonymous. So Prince apparently helped out a lot of people. Well, you know, people don't know. Some people they know he did Morris Day and he did Apollonia and Vanity Six, and I mean we can go down a laundry list of other groups that he had, like I had, you know what I mean? But he made money off of his music. I didn't, but that blew me away. You know, Prince is listening to my shit. Michael Jackson, I met when I performed at Studio 54. He had been invited and came down. The Bad album had just not yet come out. He saw the show. I was in the dressing room afterwards, and these two big bodyguards, I mean, you know, football player dudes come in and go, Michael would like to speak to you. And I thought, oh shit, must be one of the owners. What did I do? Must have done something bad. They're gonna throw me out. And I get downstairs and I'm like nervous looking around, and we're walking this direction. I thought, oh, we're gonna walk like through like the seated VIP area to get to like some door that they'd push open, and they're gonna tie me up and beat me for doing some show. And Michael Jackson is there, you know what I mean? And I was like, oh shit. And he goes, hello, pleased to meet you. And I said, pleased to meet you, Mr. Jackson. It's Michael. I said, okay, I think I said Mr. Michael out of being nervous. He said, I like your music. And I said, I like your music. He says, I'm doing a new album, and I did I have a song called Speed Demon. Would you like to remix it? And I went, yeah. He goes, oh, okay. Someone will be in touch with you. Thank you. And then like these bodyguards, like, all right, out. You know what I mean? Like, what? I mean, he was famous, but not super. He was a super. I mean, he was pretty big.
Right.
You know what I mean? But not like King of Pop famous yet. And I thought, holy shit, you know. Okay, yeah, right. You know what? He doesn't have my phone number. You know what I mean? And about 4 weeks later, Quincy Jones has Q West Productions, and he called the record label where Import 12 Sugar Scoop, where Raul was still working, and Raul got the tape sent over, and we did a hip hop bebop Boogie Down Bronx version of Speed Demon, right? We streetified it, 808, you know, style, and sent it to Sony, and Quincy Jones loved it, and Michael Jackson hated it, so it's sitting in a vault somewhere.
I would love to hear that.
I would too. I wish I had it. You know, I wish I had the final mix somewhere. You know, I just put it out bootleg. Speed Demon, Speed Demon, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been cool, right?
That'd have been nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for watching. We're going to be back on next week. Going to put some stuff on. PARRISH, Manny, I'll say that. I want to say Mr. Parrish, but I'm saying Man PARRISH. Thank you for being on.
Not Franny, all right? You know, I did an interview last week, and the guy, he had a girl on as the other interviewer, and her name was Queen. And these guys would call and say, how you doing? It was Jeffrey Kwan. How you doing? Whatever his name is, G, whatever. And how you doing, Queen? And I went, why is everybody calling me a queen? It was her, you know what I mean? So, yeah, all right. My name's Manny. Don't wear it out.
All right, Manny. Well, we're going to go ahead and end this. I'm going to talk to you a minute after we go off, but I appreciate you. And
I appreciate you for doing this, and thank you so much, guys. Whoever's listening, guys and girls, whatever, whoever's listening,
quite a few.
Putting up with my shit and listening to it. Thank you. I want that number. We need to. Thank you.
All right, and we'll talk with you next week. Let me go ahead and run that music again and my video again.